Excellent. Okay, so this is our standard training materials as of last year for Fieldbook version 5.4. If you install Fieldbook from the Play Store now, you'll get 5.5. So we have a slightly updated version there. And then within the app, there is an update feature that will show you that lets you get up to 5.6. But the changes are fairly minor, so we'll be able to walk you through all the basics with this presentation here. Just to give you a little bit of background I know some of you guys said you have used Fieldbook before, others are relatively new to it. It has, in terms of app development timelines, it's been around for a while now, a little over 10 years. Trevor first developed it as part of his PhD at Kansas State in Jesse Pullen's lab. The idea, and you can tell this probably from the logo here, is that it was originally designed for wheat breeding. In fact, as we take a look in the app and you load sample data, you'll see the sample trials are wheat trials that Trevor was conducting during his PhD. The idea behind the app is to make use of what at the time was an emerging technology, and now as well quite a bit cheaper than alternatives, and use smartphones to get past paper and clipboard, eliminate the need to copy data that you've written down later onto a computer, but also to navigate intuitively from plot to plot. So as opposed to if you take a laptop out and you have to arrow from cell to cell, Fieldbook can show you just one plot at a time and follow you by a row or column through the field. And finally, by creating customized trait formats and restricted, entry options, minimums, maximums, defined categories, it can greatly reduce the risk of error, accidentally entering a value you didn't mean to. Besides those kind of basic advantages, over time we've added a lot of additional features and kind of ease of use tools. So when you first install Fieldbook, you'll have the option to walk through a tutorial, load sample data, and set up your interface exactly how you want. Some of those customizations can include these info bars on the collect screen. They let you load additional context in when you're collecting data, say you're not just what's in your plot, but maybe the pedigree or previously measured trait values. Speaking of traits, you can manage your traits within the app. I think we're up to almost 20 trait formats now. And because of all these features, we've got lots of installs. Fieldbook is by far the most popular app that we work on, which is exciting and frustrating sometimes when the other apps are so far behind. But okay, so getting started. Step one is to install the app from the Play Store. We mentioned that you can get version 5.5 from the Play Store at the moment. When you first open the app, there are a couple of kind of initial one-time setup questions you have to answer. So Fieldbook needs to choose a storage location on the device and needs permission to access the device to then write files to the storage location and retrieve them. So you have to, allow that permission, pick the folder where you want Fieldbook to store its files. You can create a new one, which is generally recommended. Then allow Fieldbook to access your camera for photo traits, and finally answer a couple of questions whether you want to load sample data and enable the tutorial. I would suggest generally always say yes to loading the sample data. It's easy to delete later once you don't need it. The tutorial probably only necessary the first time or two that you use the app. Okay, This is starting to become a little obsolete, but from the beginning, getting data in and out of Fieldbook has all been file-based. And so it's important to kind of know the underlying folder structure where the files that Fieldbook uses are stored. Probably the one that users deal the most with are these first two. So whenever you collect data in the app and export it, the files are locally stored, the export files, in this field export folder. That's true even if you also choose to send the file to someone via email or save it to a Google Drive. It'll also be stored in the field export folder. For getting field layout files in, if you're doing that, if you're getting your fields in via file transfer, you want to put them in your field import folder, and then the app can automatically read them from the fields page. The rest of these generally aren't accessed directly as much. Well, plot data is if you're taking a lot of photos. Each trial will get its own subdirectory and plot data, and then within that subdirectory will be directories for storing the plot photos and audio files. That's about it at the moment, but if any other traits are added with different media types, that's the way they're stored. Anything that can't be stored in the database goes in plot data. Another thing that is kind of optional, but can be quite handy depending on whether you need it, is the resources folder. That's where you put, for example, images to reference for trait rating scales. And then you can pull them up during the collect screen to verify, what you think is a 5 in your 1 to 9 scale looks like the example in the example photo. Database, that's where you can manually export a database file, and also where the database is automatically backed up. The manual export's handy if you are transferring data from one device to another. You can just export your Fieldbook database from one device, then import it on another, and that'll carry over all your data. Traits, similar to field import, this is where you would put your trait files if you are importing traits externally. It's also where if you save your traits, they'll be written to a trait file here. And when I say trait file, it gets the extension .trt, but it's just a CSV file when you actually open it. So don't be confused by that. And then finally, archive. Tane, you had a question about this one. Archive is used to store any field export files that you've chosen to overwrite on export. So for example, if you're collecting data multiple times over the course of a season in a field, maybe you export your initial data you collected after planting, and then later on you collect more data and you want to export again, you might overwrite the original file because your new file is going to have the old data plus the new data. When you overwrite, the old file gets moved. It doesn't get deleted, it just gets moved to archive. So if there was some error and you need to recover the original, you can go find it in archive. Okay. I think last little bit of setup information is editing the profile. So Fieldbook, you'll load your fields, you'll load your traits. The other bit of information that gets attached to every measurement you make is who's doing the collecting. And this one's more optional, but also where, location data. As of 5.5, we've made this required by default. So you won't actually have to navigate on your own to find the profile setting. When you go to collect it'll pop up and ask you to set the person who's using the app. And that's just first and last name. All right, so now that we've done some of the initial housekeeping there, let's talk about how you actually start using the app to collect your data on a specific field. Step one is to get your field layout file. Usually that's designed outside Fieldbook app. So whether it's in your database lets you do that. I'm not sure if GDR has those features. I would assume potentially it does. Or in R or whatever software used to design your field, you'd export your field layout file and then import it into Fieldbook.
Excuse me, Brian. Can
Yep.
we ask questions along the way?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Go ahead. I know I covered a lot there, so let's pause for a second. Let me know if you have questions.
So for designing your field, most of our fields are set up in Excel files. Would that work as well here? Doesn't have to be R or anything, does it?
Yep. So the field import can handle CSV and Excel. Those are your two options. So Excel is fine.
Oh, you mean Excel file works?
It does, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can show you.
I didn't know that. I just saw CSV file works only, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how new of a feature that is. It's possible at one point only CSV worked, but yeah, the latest versions definitely support both formats. And we'll take a look on a upcoming slide here what that format looks like. But good question. And so yeah, you have your file, transfer it to the device that you're using. In the past, the best way to do that was actually connecting with a USB cable and manually transferring. Now there's better support for cloud transfers. So if you use Google Drive or a similar service, the app will let you navigate to any directory on your device to import a field. So they don't have to go directly into the field import folder if you don't want. Right, so here's an example layout structure. So this could be in a CSV file or an XLS or XLSX file, depending on what's easiest for you. The minimum required information is these first three columns here. But of course, to be most useful, you generally want additional context in your layout file. But essentially, you need one column to consist of unique identifiers. They have to be unique with respect to each other in the file, as well as to previously imported fields. So you'll get an error if you've already loaded something with this plot ID. And then you want at least two additional columns to serve as your primary and secondary identifiers, which is what you'll look at as you navigate through your field to tell where you are. So usually that's, well, actually, this is an interesting case here. Usually that's row and column number, but you can also do row and plot or anything else of your choosing. And then, yeah, the example here, often you'll want to know what germplasm is in your plot, as well as it could be helpful to know the pedigree or what seed lot it came from, or whatever else you want.
So those white columns are all customizable then?
Yep. And the order here actually isn't important either, so that you'll be prompted to choose which columns in your file you are your unique identifier, your primary ID, and your secondary. So yeah, it's quite customizable in how you do it.
I just wanted to add, so to use with BIMS. So in BIMS, we say unique ID and primary ID or something, primary and secondary and stock name. So, but then in Beams, you can change it into like row or plot or whatever you want to when you first start, you know. And also I just wanted to say like most of us like so they will we will use Beams and then we want to use Brappy. So to do that, like you have to send the empty file like this through Brappy first, and then you can collect it and then you can send it back using Brappy. So just wanted to
Yeah.
add that.
Yeah, good comment. So yeah, a database can often generate this file for you, and the future workflow we're moving to is not even having to deal with the file directly and using the Breeding API to transfer this data. And we can show an example of that when we start looking at the emulator. Good point. All right. Oh, and here's, yeah, this is the little pop-up that tells you or lets you choose your specific columns, which is your unique and which are your primary and secondary.
Oh, did you change the name primary order to primary identifier? Did you change the new version? I'm not sure.
I believe it's still called primary order, and I
Okay,
misspoke
that's
because
good.
I'm used to
Great.
thinking of identifier. Yeah, good question.
Because I saw something yesterday and then yeah, that's
Yeah.
never mind.
But I will say, so the interesting thing about giving these trainings is now that I'm aware of what's coming up feature wise, don't get too attached to this format. I know Trevor has plans to simplify this so that you only choose the unique identifier on import, and then at any point you can change primary and secondary. So this will be changing a little bit, simplified in upcoming versions of the app.
Okay, one more question. So information in here, like a seed name, those names can be seen when you're collecting data?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Any other data you can see, like can you make a custom column then you can see in the field book?
Yeah. So all of these columns are
Mhm.
customizable. You don't need a seed name, seed ID, or pedigree column. This is just what Trevor happened to use for his trial.
Okay.
You can load a spreadsheet with any columns you want, and
And
all
you
of
can
them.
see.
Yeah, you can choose any subset of them to be visible while
I
you're
see.
collecting data.
Okay. Thank you.
So Brian, like, when we collect data, I saw like on the interface, we only see the unique identifier or like one or two column names, right? Not everything.
So yeah, you can't see it all at the same time, but you can. They're drop downs. They're called info bars, and you can adjust what you're seeing.
I think you can see two items at a time, I think.
Yeah, I think
you can pick it.
Good answer. Yeah, the default's 2 or 3. There's
Yeah,
also
2 or
a
3, yeah.
setting where you can expand that number.
Yeah.
It'll take up more real estate on the collect screen, but you can make it more than 2 or 3.
But when you have pictures, the pictures named after the plant ID, unique identifier.
Yeah. So anytime you take a photo or record audio, the file is going to be named using your unique identifier.
Yeah.
And in this case,
Yep.
this first column here. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Good questions. All right, so let's keep going, and we'll see live examples of this. This is an example of if you're transferring files manually, some of the settings you might have to change. When you connect a cable to Android, it'll often not know that you want to use it for file transfer. So watch out for that if that's how you're doing it. But we're often transferring in other ways. Okay, and then here's a quick overview of what it actually looks like on the field screen. When you're importing, we were talking about importing from local storage. We'll talk about Brappy or show that in a little bit later. When you import from local storage, these are the sample files that are stored on the device. You'll actually see one additional to these four now. There should be one called training, a training field as well, that we added this past year. And then once you choose your file, it's mentioned that's the little dialogue to determine which is the unique identifier. And I see what you're saying, Tane. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
looks like it has been changed to primary and secondary.
Mm.
That's a bit of a misnomer. Yeah, it really is more about the order. The identifier that really matters is the unique one. All right. And finally, once your fields are imported, there's some options on the fields page to manage them. That can include resorting the order. So if your plots, for example, are sorted by plot number, but at some point you need them sorted by stock name or germplasm name, you can adjust that sorting. You can also delete things that are imported and no longer needed. And as you work with the field, you'll see dates displayed on the field item. The first one is the date that you imported it. When you first edit the field, you'll see a new date pop up that tells you your last edit time or last data collected time. And finally, when you export, a third date will pop up telling you the latest time that you exported data. And the final number here is the number of plots, entries, whatever your observation unit is in the trial. So all of the samples here have 200 plots in them. Okay. Now, in the in-person training, here's where everyone will get their devices and start testing what we've talked about out so far. But and if you do have a device, I'd recommend playing along here and running through this if you can. But so we can all have a look at what this looks like. I will see if I can do all this on my emulator as well. And we'll start from scratch here. So I do not have Fieldbook installed yet. So let's go ahead and install it. So if you search Fieldbook app in the Play Store, it should be the first option here. All right, so click install.
I think we're just still seeing your slides.
Oh, thank you. I'll have to share my whole let me modify the share here. It should be showing my whole desktop. Interesting. Let's see.
Now we see what looks like a
Okay.
cell phone.
Yep. But but the presentation probably disappeared, right? Let's
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to modify it one more time and let me know. If you
Yeah,
can
now I see both.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we got Fieldbook installed. Go ahead and open it. Here are some of the setup steps we mentioned. So we'll have to define a location on the device for file storage and allow file storage permissions. Generally, and this is Fieldbook used to do this automatically on its own. It's only in newer Android versions that it's required to ask permission and have you do this manually. But you just can create a folder called Fieldbook. All right, we'll use that one.
Quick question, Brian. So this doesn't work on iPhones, right? It's only for Androids?
Yes, yeah, that's a common question. But yeah, it only works on Android, and there's been a bit of development to get it working on iPhone. The Breeding Insight team at Cornell, I think, have been the main folks focused on that at Breeding API hackathons. But it's probably still a couple years out before that's actually released and working with all the features that are available in the Android version. Yeah. So we are limited to Android at the moment. Okay, so we're using the folder we just created. Allow. We are not migrating from a previous installation, so we'll skip this. And we'll give permission to take pictures, use location, and record audio. And I would suggest, yeah, always loading sample data. We'll enable the tutorial too, just so you guys can see how that works. When the tutorial is enabled, it's available in the toolbar with that question mark. It'll kind of walk you through what all these different items on the page are used for. But we're going through that ourselves, so we don't need to use that necessarily right now. Okay, so then we're talking about field import. So when we go to the fields page, we'll see the 3 sample fields already loaded, and what we want to do is import the training sample. So on the fields page, you go to the plus symbol here. It'll ask you to import from local or cloud storage. Cloud storage really just means using the file system file picker. So it'll let you choose an import from anywhere on the device. Actually, maybe I'll show that right now, because it's pretty handy and something that I use pretty frequently. So if you choose import local, it's accessing that that field import folder in the fieldbook folder. Right now it contains all of our sample files. If you choose cloud storage, it takes you to the option to navigate anywhere on your file system. So I can still access the field import folder and access the file I want, but I can also go anywhere else on the device. You know, maybe I downloaded the file from a browser, or maybe it's in my drive. So that's quite handy to use the cloud import option. But I'll go back to, where are you? We created fieldbook folder. Right here. Field import. Okay. Put in the training sample. And usually it chooses sensible defaults. We do want the plot ID as our unique identifier, and row, and we'll want column as our primary and secondary. Okay. All right, and that's it. So now we have our field here. We could resort if we want. If it were a Brappy field, we could sync, and if we needed to, we can delete. And just to show you what the sort looks like, this is your sort picker, and I could, right now it's sorted by our default options here, so by row and column, or actually, let me speak, it's sorted in the same order that the file was sorted when you imported. But if we want to resort, for example, by germplasm, we could choose that and then save it. And you can even do multi-sorts as well. So you could sort by germplasm and then something else. But we'll go ahead and cancel that and leave the default sort. Any additional questions about getting fields into the app?
Oh, Brian, is it possible to show us the field file you training sample?
Yeah, let's see.
It's what it look like. Is it CSV file, right?
It is.
Okay.
Again, it doesn't have to be a CSV, but that is what all the sample files are. Yeah, since we're working on the emulator here, I'll have to see what we're able to handle here. But let's go into Okay,
Oh, yeah.
see if we can open. Yeah, we don't have a
Oh,
good way to view it here. Yeah, I'm not sure. It should be. I think we could do that in Drive, right? Let me try one other thing. Yeah. Hmm. Just to move it there. Let's. Trying to think if I have it on my local computer here at all. Fortunately, I don't. But maybe we can come back to that same. Yeah.
Sorry.
It won't be too interesting. It'll be this exact format here for the sample files.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's getting fields in. The next step is traits. So traits are handled in the second option from the main screen. And here we're going to discuss how to create traits locally. But you also have the option to import from file or import from a database using the breeding API. When you import from file or breeding API, it'll handle all of your trait settings on its own. But if you're creating the trait within the app, you have a bunch of settings to define depending on the trait format that you choose. So for you're seeing example here, the numeric format, every trait has to have a name. Many of them allow you to set a default, which is handy. You know, maybe you're collecting like a plant stand count, and you know what how many plants you planted. That can be the default, and then you adjust up and down depending on how far off of the default you are. You can also set minimum, maximum. If you have I know a lot of crop ontology traits are a 1 to 9 scale, and you would do that with a categorical trait. But I have seen some people do it numeric and set minimum 1, max 9. Not the best way to. Probably you want categorical for that though.
Brian, can you set all of this up in an Excel file and have those headings and then import the whole thing rather than having to do it one at a time on the app?
You can, yeah. In fact, so if you take a look at the sample trait file that comes with the app, the extension is .trt, but you can open it as a spreadsheet, and that's the format that the app uses. So you can modify and import traits if you create a spreadsheet in that format. Yeah. I don't know how frequently that's done though. The tricky part is different trait formats require different settings. So like minimum, maximum's only relevant for numeric traits. A better example, let's say it's a yield trait. You'd want the minimum to be 0. You wouldn't want it to be allowed to go negative. And you might have a maximum just because, you can't have a yield of 1 million or something like that. But yeah, that is a good question. That is something you can do. And a lot of databases might, if they're not using Brappy, might generate a file for import.
Yes, again, like in BIMS, Jill, like we have a trait template, so you can set all this up, and then in BIMS, you can say generate TRT file basically. Then it generates, nice. And then we can import to Fieldbook. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
How can we bring the Brappy data to here?
Yeah. So when you first choose import, if you have Brappy set up, it'll show up as one of your options. We can we'll look at that in the emulator when we get there. I will say it's a newer feature. So one thing is don't expect it to be the easiest to use sometimes. We're adding additional options like searching the list of Brappy traits, but at the moment you kind of have to page through, say there are 200 traits, you might have to page many times to find the one you're looking for. But it is very nice once you have it set up to be able to do the automated sync and export. But yeah, we'll take a look at that in a little bit. Oh, so any other questions about trait additions?
I just wanted to say, like, even if you don't use Brappy, like you can generate the TRT file in Beams and then just upload to Fieldbook using USB. Basically.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Mhm.
one more question. So if you have you create an Excel file for a trait, and then you input that trait file, and assume I have a new trait, can I use add trait, just add trait onto that, just the input the trait file, just to use, yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand your question. Can you
Okay.
can you add an additional trait after you've imported on top of the imported traits?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll skip to the next page here. As you import traits, they show up in this list here, and you can keep adding to this list however you like. So maybe you imported this set from file, you can still manually add additional traits. If you then want them all in the same file, you can then go export them to a new trait file. So it is quite flexible in that sense. Like Suk said, though, if you're working with a database, be careful. It's generally best to import the traits from a trait file generated from the database, if possible, because if you start adding your own traits, but the database doesn't know about them, you can run into problems where it's not possible to easily export the data to the database.
Hey, Brian, I had to make sure this. So if you import a trait from the local file or something, you cannot, and then you collect the data. So those data cannot be exported as a Brappy. So
correct.
Something you have to make sure, breeder how to make sure if you are uploading the trait file with local file, then you only export to the local file, right? So if we are using Brappy, you cannot upload the file to create a trait here.
Yes, yeah, that's an important caveat, and you should get a pop-up in the app when you're using Brappy that warns you of that. So Brappy traits can be sent back to a Brappy database or exported locally, but local traits can only be exported locally. They can't be sent to.
I had to make sure that.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing to mention about this trait screen is, so your imported or added traits show up here, and then you have features to manage them. So you'll see the checkbox determines whether the trait is active. Only the active traits will show up in the collect screen. So, say you have all these loaded, but you only want to go to the field and collect insect damage data. You could use this little checkbox to uncheck them all and then check just insect damage. The other thing that matters here is the order. So the order they show on this page is the order they show up on the collect screen. And if you want to adjust that, you can drag and drop the traits using the little hamburger bar here. And then finally, this this menu symbol in between the drag and drop and the checkbox opens the option to edit or delete the trait if need be. And the menu in the upper right hand corner, you can access trait sort to change the order of the traits automatically via the alphabetical name or something else. Okay, so here's where we get to the second exercise. We imported the training sample, and this exercise is about kind of adding and managing some traits to use with the training file. So if you got a device, see if you can follow along, and I will pull up the emulator again here and go ahead and show that in the app as well. And let me know, since I'm changing what's showing here, let me know if you can still see the presentation and the emulator.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we're working on the traits activity here. These are all our default traits that come loaded with the sample data. And what we want to do is make a new trait. So actually, I should have mentioned, when you see this plus symbol, whether it's fields or traits, that's usually add. And on this page, it's available in the toolbar and floating down here. All right, and so format for stem color, we want that to be categorical. So we can select that out of our dropdown. Group the name, stem color, and not really very important, but everything else is all lowercase. So let's make it a lowercase. And we could add details here. These will show up on the collect screen as additional context if needed. Often, if you're, say you have a height trait, you might want to put your units you're measuring in the details. And then specifically for this, let's add some color categories. So we'll do red, black, purple, and amber. And when you enter your last category, I believe it still saves it if you don't hit the plus, but it's good practice to still hit the plus. So you're not risking missing it. We can confirm that though by coming back and seeing, yep, it's got all 4 categories we entered there. Okay. So we added our new trait. Now we probably don't want to collect all of these at the same time, so we'll use that select all, deselect all option here to unselect all of them, and then we can reactivate what we want. And so we'll have our plant number counter trait, stem color we just added, flowering, which is a date trait, insect damage, and picture. All right. And right, so the other thing, if we just go to the collect screen now, they'll show up in the order of this list, but we probably don't want to take them in this order. In particular, picture, I guess it depends on the person, but I like to have the picture at the end of my trait workflow. So I'm going to move that to the back. You can have insect damage, second to last, flowering here, and stem color implants. Yeah. All right, so now we got all the traits we want and in the order we want. Does that all make sense for the trait management? Let me know if there are any questions, and we can, I guess I'll skip over to the collect screen now. So we have our field loaded. and it's our active field, which is indicated by the radio button there. We have our traits loaded and active. So now to the heart of the app, we can go to the collect screen. And I mentioned this is a new setting in version 5.5. Every time you open the collect activity in a given app session, it'll confirm who is actually using the app. So I need to make sure I set up my name here for the profile. All right. So it's got me listed. If for some reason you don't want to be tracking who's taking the data, you can turn the requirement off here and it'll stop confirming. Or you can adjust the interval so that it's verifying more or less frequently. Okay. And there we go. So now we have our collect screen. Another feature that you won't see in our little training presentation here is version 5.5 now has progress bars for both the trait advancement and entry advancement. So as we go through the traits, we'll see that green progress bar.
Quick question. Can you add multiple people? Like, can we switch between people like with one tablet?
Right. You can, but there's no way to store the name. So you just have to edit the profile every time. That's an interesting thought, though. Maybe that'll be a feature request we should make to let you store more than one profile than just select out of the list. But yeah, right now you would just enter a name into the single profile. All right, so those are our 5 traits we have active, and then this is our progress bar for our entries. Okay. Any questions about that process of getting the traits in? What we will cover the BRAPI import option, but I think it's probably best to do that once we get to the settings where we actually set up BRAPI. Then we can come back and show BRAPI fields and trait import. Okay, so let's head back and start taking a look at the meat of the app, which is the collect activity. So we'll just quickly go through a breakdown of what's on the collect screen, because it can get kind of busy once you have all your settings set up. At the top is a toolbar with, by default, these 4 tools. The first one is a search that lets you open a dialog and type in a unique identifier, try and jump to a specific plot or entry. This next one, that folder with a star, opens your resource folder. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that's where you might have an image that's a reference for what the particular scale for a trait means. This other file looking symbol is your summary tool. And when you pull that up, it'll show you all of the information the app has stored for the current entry. So that'll be all the attributes you imported, as well as all the traits and values you've collected so far. And then the last tool here is a little lock that lets you freeze the input section. So if maybe you've collected all your data and you're clicking back through to review it, you might turn the lock on so you don't accidentally change it when you don't need to. All right, and then this next session, these are the info bars we were talking about. So these are actually drop downs. You can click on where it says plot ID here and change what's being displayed. Your options are to display any of the columns that you imported in your field layout file. So that could, you might show the pedigree here, the germplasm. In the latest versions of the app, certainly in 5.5 now, you can also choose to display trait data here. So say you collected some rating earlier in the season and you want it as context when you collect a later rating, you can show that, pick that out and show it here. All right, and then we already talked about this a little bit. You have your trait navigation, the green arrows, and your entry navigation with the black arrows. And they now have progress bars. They also, here's where you can see the trait description will show up here if you want that for context. And in the entry navigation, these are your primary and secondary orders that you picked during import. You don't only have to click these arrows, you can also press and hold and it'll start speeding up your progress through the entries. All right, and then the bottom half of the screen here is your data input. The layout here is specific to the trait format, so this would be the format for a numeric trait. If it's categorical trait, you'll just see buttons corresponding to the categories. And for date traits or counter traits, you'll have buttons or options specific to those formats as well. The bottom bar here gives you some tools specific to the data you're collecting. So if you collect type something wrong, the trash can here will clear what you typed. If you need to enter a not applicable value, you can just shortcut here is to press NA. And then if you want to enter a value by scanning a barcode, you can use this. And that's actually pretty common with height traits. If you have a height barcode stick, you can enter the value just by scanning your barcode stick. Right, and here are all of your different, actually not even all of your formats. These are all the formats as of last year, and we've added a couple more options. But you'll see that it's quite flexible. Even multi-category traits are a nice one when you have a categorical trait where you're entering not just one, but multiple categories at a time. And in addition to all of these, we now have additional photo traits. So GoPro camera and USB camera if you're using a camera that's external to the device. And here's what I mentioned about the barcode entry. A common use of that is for height sticks, or even a categorical trait. You might have a sheet with barcodes corresponding to each category and quickly scan it. Before we get to that exercise, are any questions about the collect screen and the various formats here?
Hi, Brian.
Uh-huh.
I have a quick question on navigating on different plots and row columns. So
Mhm.
if you click those arrows, like the black ones, you
Yep.
can only move one plot at a time. Can you jump to another rows? And if you want to measure a different
Yeah.
row,
Good question.
I tried it. It can only move one plot at a time.
Yeah, so the default settings look like this. You're just moving one plot at a time. However, there are, when we review settings, there are some settings you can turn on to let you jump. So one of the settings makes this row plot or primary, secondary thing here editable. So if you want to jump to row 10, plot 10, you would be able to type in 1010 and jump right to it. Another option, you can add a barcode scanner to the toolbar up here that lets you scan your plot ID from a barcode and jumps straight to the whatever plot you're standing at. And yeah, I actually, if you have the ability to label all your plots, that's a really good way to go. Definitely recommend that. All right. So let's go ahead and do a very brief look at what the collection looks like with this training sample trial. And then we'll get into discussing some of those settings, and we can show how you can customize your collect process to fit exactly what works best for you. There we go. Okay. All right, so we're taking a look at our collect here. We can skip back to our first trait. Oh, and I guess I'm gonna have to hide part of this field no matter what, but that's all right. All right, so here's what collect could look like in the field. So I don't know how your folks' trials work. I know a lot of the breeders I've worked with, their first plot is often in the bottom left. So you know, you might start out row 1, column 1, walk in this plot here, and say, all right, there are, let's see, 4 plants. Stem color looks like it's red. I don't see any flowers, not flowering yet. I do see insect damage. And you might take a photo. Now this won't be won't be a photo of a field on the emulator. This is just the default virtual reality room on the emulator, but let's imagine that's a plot photo. All right, and this photo, like we mentioned before, this will automatically get named according to the plot that you're on, this plot ID. So it's easy to match up later. And then you might advance to the next plot. So we're walking up the first row here and repeat the process. So plants, see 5 plants, stem color is purple, still not flowering, no insect damage. And you might take another photo. Let's look at something else in this room, just for variety's sake. Okay, yes. There we go. If we advance the trait selector without advancing the plot, you'll see the data you already collected in red. Red indicates that it's been stored in the database. So that's one handy way to know that you've already been on that plot. And these traits are where we didn't collect data, so this isn't red because we didn't store a flowering date. And insect damage, because we didn't click true, it defaults to false. So that's how those guys work. Let's do one more plot here just to get through everything. So all right, we're now on plot 3. I see 3 plants, and stem color looks like it's red again. It is flowering now, so we'll go ahead and save the flowering date. No insect damage. We can take an additional photo. Okay. And yeah, we could, then you can get going at a quick pace here and go through all of this, but hopefully that's enough to get the concept here. Are there any questions come up based on that kind of simple phenotyping workflow there? Something, I guess I should show a few of these other toolbar tools that we talked about. This question mark again is the manual. In fact, we'll turn that off in a second because we
Brian,
don't need that.
can you show them data grid?
Yeah.
That's a really good feature.
Agreed. Yeah.
So you have to go setting, I think.
I kind of want to make that a turned on by default. I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's probably the nicest setting.
Mhm.
All right, we're
Yeah.
getting.
After that, Michael has a question. Like his mic doesn't work.
Okay. I will keep that in mind. All right, I'm gonna turn on the data grid. We'll take a quick look at that, and then we can answer your question, Michael. So we're getting, this is what we're gonna cover next, but a lot of what you see in the collect screen, you can customize in the settings. And the first settings section here, general settings, includes at the bottom the option to turn on data grid. And that I highly recommend turning it on and having that available while you're collecting, because it's a really nice feature to get a summary of what you've done so far in the field. So it adds this symbol to the toolbar, and then when you click on that, it pulls up a grid, and it actually defaults to the top one being the last, or what plot you're currently on. So I'm going to drag so we can see everything here. But yeah, so basically a grid of what we've collected so far. We can see we have values for all the traits for the first 3 plots. We don't have flowering values for the first 2, but that's expected because they're not flowering. But if it wasn't expected, if we miss something, we can go ahead and click on that particular cell, and it'll jump us to that plot, that trait, so we can fill in that missing data.
So
One other,
that seems like a good place to put the NA so that you don't have a blank in there, right?
I would say yes, except the format of this particular trait expects a date, so it won't necessarily. Well, I guess it depends on the database, but the database, not sure if they would like an NA. But you're right, maybe depends on your workflow. Maybe you would want to put an NA. Let's go ahead and do that for these 2, and then
So
take a look back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think BIMS takes NAs, right? Yeah.
Right. No,
then-
it doesn't take NA. So what's the difference NA and then keep empty? NA means what?
So like if I analyze data in R, I need to replace all the empty cells with NA.
So
Oh.
yeah, I guess the only point of entering an NA was so you know that you've dealt with that sample, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you've looked. It's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you could remove it when you export your data or whatever if you need to. But for me, because I have a brain like a sieve, it makes it easier if I have something there.
Rather than leave empty. That's
Well, I mean,
sometimes, like,
would there
if
be
you
a way
have-
to somehow mark that it's been looked at, but not actually record a value?
so NA could be any trait format. So date should be NA, and then categorical you can put NA. Every trait can put NA.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't tested it with categorical. Let's see.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll make a BIMS take NA and then doesn't enter the data. Just because when you export it, all NA coming out from the fieldbook.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I need to change a little bit BIMS to ignore NA.
Yeah, I think I know Breedbase has a similar issue where it doesn't expect NAs, it expects it just to be not there if it wasn't collected. But I can see the value in having the NA to know that you actually looked at it.
Yeah.
Rather than completely missed it.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, and then the other, so that's NA. Here's your clear action. I don't have a good way to scan a barcode to enter a trait value, but if you imagine we had a barcoded height stick, we could scan it and it would populate a value Or actually, this is our categorical one, so maybe we'd scan a sheet with barcodes indicating the different categories.
So, Brian, for the flower trait, like how do you like include the picture and underlying that trait? So you can enter the value and take a picture, right?
Right. I think this has come up before. With the current fieldbook options, you would have a separate trait, right? This picture could be your flower picture.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have like an overall plot picture and a flower specific picture.
Mm.
I think there is a feature request. I think Cheney maybe worked on this a bit to allow the addition of photos to an existing specific trait. But that's not part of any other released versions of the app yet.
But can you take multiple pictures of a plot and just, they'd all be named with that plot name? Or can
Yeah.
you have one photo because it's a unique identifier is naming the photo?
No, you're right. You can take more than one photo, so we can show that here. You can take theoretically as many as you want per plot. They will be named. The naming structure is with the plot ID. Then I believe it's underscore the photo number. So this would be photo 1, photo 2, the trait name. So if the photos are different things, it is usually a good idea to have distinct traits. So it'll be,
I
root
think
photo,
timestamp too.
and then finally, and finally the timestamp.
Yep.
So
it's very unique, right?
Yeah. That was a good question. Any other questions here? So, let's go ahead and use the search. So the search is pretty flexible at this point. The simplest search might be searching for a specific plot ID. But maybe I don't want to type the whole thing, so I could say, let's go for a plot ID that contains our plot number 0505. Yep. And so it found 0505. We can jump right to it. Or you can search by germplasm, or any of these are all the columns that have been imported with the field, as well as traits we've already collected. So we can search by a trait value as well. And then the resource folder here, we don't have anything loaded in it at the moment, so it won't be the most useful to show. But if you add any images, this is where you can pull them up as a reference. And here's our summary tool. So this is showing us for plot 505. Here are all of our imported, we call them attributes, all the additional columns, as well as our traits. We didn't collect any data on 505 yet, so let's do that. So we have column 5. Looks like it has 4 plants. Black stem color. So now if we look at the summary, we should see all of the data we collected and the values here as well. And this is customizable. So, if we don't want to see all of this and we want our quick summary just to show, the data we already collected and germplasm, maybe we can adjust it so that it's not quite so busy. All right. Oh, and then the lock. So if we go ahead and lock. Oh. Interesting. That may not be expected behavior here. Let's see. Yeah. It seems to be unlocked in every state. But theoretically, if you go ahead and lock here, it'll prevent you from entering new data. I think we just found a bug, but that's a fun part of these trainings. Okay. Let's make sure we're still at floor plans. Yeah. All right. Any other questions about the default collect screen?
I have a question about NA again, sorry.
Uh-huh.
So you pick format text, right? And then if you type NA, it's gonna
Uh-huh.
be a problem.
So
Because
for field, Mhm.
I expect ignore NA, right?
Uh-huh.
But if you put NA as a text, I don't want to ignore. Right.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Let's
well, it's really maybe never happen, but it is possible. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
yeah, so type NA.
yeah, it'll
It's a bigger.
let you
Uh,
enter NA here. I'm not sure what the best strategy would be. I think
can you click the grid?
Mhm.
What's the? It's gonna be NA there. Oh, where's that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hope they don't put NA there, but
yeah, I think this is
Yes.
probably something to set in your standard operating procedures for your program or
it's
interacting
really
with the
minor
data.
detail, so
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
I guess
No
we
problem.
can ignore NA in notes,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah,
mean
I think
very
so.
much anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, while we're looking at data grid, one thing I forgot to mention here is you'll notice, so the columns here are our trait names, and the left by default here is our primary ID, but because of our limitations of the screen real estate, you can't really distinguish easily here. So in the upper right hand corner, you can choose different row headers. So, I might choose the plot number to better tell what plot I'm actually on in this small display space. That's a handy thing to be able to adjust.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I have one more question about NA. So like Jill, it's more a question for Jill. So what's the purpose of like you put the NA and then you're not gonna come back and reassess at all, or are you going to come back and reassess? Like for the flowering, you say NA, but then next day it may flower, right? So why would you put NA if you want to come back and phenotype?
Well, for me, like I said, I have a brain like a sieve, and it's like, did I forget to look at that thing? Or did I look at it and it's not flowering? So it's really just for me being an idiot and not being able to keep track of where I am. So
but then you will come back and see and phenotype
right. So then the next
again.
time the next time I come out and it's flowering, that data will overwrite the NA. Is that correct?
Actually, yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But once you change to be something like some value, and then later you change, it doesn't affect. I mean, you cannot update the data in Beams, I think.
because what you're
I
going to
mean,
update onto the database is the most recent collection of data. So whatever is in the past, it just shows the progression, right? It wasn't flowering, it wasn't flowering, it wasn't flowering. Now it's flowering.
with multiple measurement, we may do that, but then not right now. We don't overwrite, right, TNT?
No, once you added data, that's it. But NA is ignore, so Beams think there's no data, right? So next time you export it, it's take the data and
Yeah, you
add it.
can enter. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the problem what I'm seeing is, so like, I don't know if it's a problem or not. So like in Ksenia's program, like multiple people collect the data. So at the end of the week or something, so they load everything into BIMS, and then they re-download and the field file, and then put it into, you know, like Fieldbook app. And so that, if you do that, like the NA will be gone. Is that okay? Because if the NA goes through BIMS, we treat them as empty fields, so you won't see NA anymore. Like if you go through the
That's
BIMS.
fine. For
That's
me,
fine,
it's just
okay.
a tracking thing. It's like, did I really look at that trait
While
and
you are doing it.
while
Okay.
I'm doing it?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah, that sounds like that
sorry,
works.
I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that, so you collect the data and then you export it, right? And then you come back the Fieldbook and then change the value and then re-export it. So new value doesn't change the data in BIMS. That's, I want to make sure that. Do you understand, everybody?
Yeah, until we have multiple measurement or whatever, right? So even
No, multiple,
yeah.
even you change the data.
Even, okay.
So you take the value like a 10 and then export it and come back, same, and then change to the 8. It doesn't, and then export it and doesn't change the value 10 to 8. No, that keep 10. So I hope that everybody understands.
I
what I'm
feel
saying.
that NA means not available. It's somehow like I check and assume it's for flowering. When I check and this plant died, so it's never will have a flower available. Then I mark NA. If I check it hasn't flowering, I just leave it empty. And then next time when it's flowering, and just put the color somehow information there. Will that be that way is better?
I think that's just everybody's preference, but
Well, NA means I checked and this trait I've done for that. I do not need to look at this plant for this trait anymore. I only check all of those, it's still empty.
Jane, that is my case. I think different breeding programs might have different definition for NAs. Like the reason I need NA like from BIMS is that if I do analysis in R, it doesn't take empty cells. So I have to go in there and manually add NA to replace all the empty cells. So if there's a mechanism in BIMS that can take NA, that would be nice.
Or at least generate NA when you
yeah.
Yes,
Export,
generate
yeah.
NA when like we download it.
yeah.
I guess it should be an option, a
Yeah.
checkbox
Yes,
option.
yes, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Well, but then did you all get what Tayin was saying? It's a different issue. So like we
Yeah.
don't allow changing the value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brian, do you know like if other databases allow that, like other databases like Breedbase using Fieldbook, do they update or?
Yeah, so my understanding of Breedbase is when you're using Brappy, it will update. So we'll see when we test this, the Brappy sync
Oh.
tracks whether your observation is new or if it's edited, and it will sync the edit if it's edited. However, if you're just exporting via files, I think Breedbase
Doesn't update.
doesn't
Okay.
update, it just knows new.
Oh.
Yeah. But this is a good discussion, but looking at the time, we should probably keep rolling,
Right.
take a look at settings. And yeah, it's probably a database and breeding program basis to figure out the best way to manage NAs. All right, so let's roll on to settings here. This is where I'm getting ahead of myself. Very last routine option to discuss here is exporting. So from the main screen, you'll see export as the fourth option. It doesn't open its own screen, it's just a dialog, and it's lets you export data for the active field. You can choose either or both of database and table format, and you can choose to export just your unique identifier with the traits you collected, or include all of the other columns that you imported with the original layout file. As well as you can export only your active traits, or you can export columns for all traits that you have loaded in the app. That can sometimes be useful if you're going to take that file and then manually enter additional data later. And finally, if you collected any photos or audio, you'll generally want to check to bundle the media data with the export file. That will create a zip file containing your spreadsheet and the plot data directory with all the photos and audio for that given field. The file name defaults to timestamp and the field name, but you can adjust this however you like. And you can, we mentioned this before with the archive directory. If you've already exported before and you don't want to have multiple versions of the export in your field export directory, you can click overwrite. And it doesn't actually delete the old files, but it will move them to the archive folder so that only the most recent one is in the export folder. All right, and here's what, internally those formats look like. This example is coming from this field sample 1 trial. If you choose only, if you choose table and you choose only unique identifier, your first column is your unique identifier, and then all the other columns are your traits and this corresponding value you collected for that plot. If you choose database, you get what you might call a long format. So rather than 1 row per plot, you get 1 row per measurement or observation. And by doing it that way, we're able to include a bunch additional metadata corresponding to the measurement. So here we have, our first plot, first trait, the value we collected, as well as the exact time it was collected, who it was collected by, where, if you're recording the location, where it was collected. And if you're taking multiple measurements of the same trait and plot, it'll tell you the number. This, for example, when we took multiple photos, we would see, photo number 1, photo number 2, since they're the same plot and trait. And yeah, it's generally, it depends on your use case, which format you choose, although you can always choose both. When you're uploading data to the database, as long as the database supports it, it's a good idea to use this format.
The beams only support database format, not table, because table, I don't know how multiple picture, how do you export in table format?
That's table format. It is a limitation, and it will only show the most recent.
I think only one of the
yeah.
picture information come, and also we gonna have a repeat measurement feature.
Right.
So table probably not work well. I think database should be works. So
yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, BIM supports it. Definitely go with database as your export format. Okay. And right, if you're using manual file transfer, these are the options you would want to choose. Make sure that your device knows you're trying to transfer files. You can also, I don't have an image of this, but we'll see it when we test export. You can also share the file via email, or set, for example, Google Drive to automatically back up your field export folder, and then you'll automatically have it available on other devices.
So Brian, like how can I like connect the data with the Google Drive?
Yeah, let's I guess we're on the exercise here, so this is a good time to cover it. Let me pull up the emulator. So if you're going to, I guess first let's generate a normal export file. So we collected data on our training field. Let's go database format. Might as well include all imported columns, let's say only active traits. We'll bundle media data, so we get those photos that we took. I'll leave the file name default the same here, and we haven't exported before, so there's no point in overwriting. Hit save. All right. So the app will automatically prompt you if you want to share by email, or if you want to manually save to Drive. That's often one of the options that will pop up here. So I can click Drive, give it permissions, and say, okay, save. So that's one way to do it. An even more streamlined way, if you want, and yeah, the citation thing will pop up every time you export. Another way to do it, if you want to make it even more automatic, would be to go into your files, go to our the directory where fieldbook data is being stored, go to field export, and you'll see here that what we just exported was written here. Now I haven't done this super recently, but I know maybe we start in Drive. But what you can do is back up this whole folder, or sync this whole folder to your Drive, and then you'll automatically get all of your export data. And yeah, I'm not sure. See. I don't remember off the top of my head how to do that automatically, but
basically there's a like existing way to sync a local folder with your Google Drive, right? Yeah.
There is, yeah. I think you have to do it through the Drive settings.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, there's a way to do that.
Yep.
And then while we're here, let's take a look at the structure here. So when you're exporting more than one file, whether it's media files included or both database and table format, it'll automatically zip it. But you can open, you can extract from that zip file. You'll see this is our spreadsheet, and then here is our subdirectory that has our images.
Yeah, so another question, like say if I have like multiple lab members and they each have the tablets, so if they all sync to the same Google Drive account, would the data folder have different names?
That's how you would probably want to set it up. I know that the sweet potato breeding program I've worked with, they have the field export directory sync to their Google Drive for all their devices, but within the Google Drive, they have it named by device. So it'll be, field export device 1, field export device 2. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So that's how the export works. I don't have a good way to open the exported file on my emulator here, but here's what it would or will look like if you choose table format. Although we only collected data for these first three plots. And then here's what it will look like if you export in database format, which is what you should do for BIMs. And you'll see you get all this extra additional information. And that can be really, really helpful knowing, who collected the data and the timestamp anytime you have to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on with an outlier or something like that. All right. Now, the most fun part is for me is settings. So the fifth option here in the config screen opens the general settings view, and here's where the ability Fieldbook really shines to customize and set things up exactly how you want. There are quite a lot of settings. So the top section here is a search, so that rather than clicking through submenus, if you have a keyword you're looking for, say you want to turn on data grid, you can search and it'll find the exact setting you want to modify. And yeah, definitely recommend turning on data grid for collection. Other ones to test out or check out, see if they work well for you, include, this one's under that first submenu, the general settings. It's the next entry with no data feature. This adds a little arrow to the toolbar, and it lets you, as you're maybe reviewing what you've collected in the field, jump to whatever the next plot is that has nothing recorded for it yet. It's a way to fill in gaps in case you missed something. Although, like we saw, the data grid will also let you see visually where you're missing data. When you disable it or activate it, it'll give you a few options, whether you want to go to the jump to the next one with no data just for your active trait, or if you want to jump to the next one that has no data for any or for all of the traits. This is the one that we mentioned in terms of advancing to the right plot more quickly than just clicking. You can enable move to unique identifier. This actually may have a different name in version 5.5. We'll take a look. But adds a tool that looks like a barcode scanner to the toolbar. You open it up and it will let you scan a label and jump exactly to the right plot, as long as that label encodes your unique identifier. And just, yeah, you can decide whether you want to do that scanning with the device camera, or if you want it as text entry, which will then, for example, you can plug an external barcode scanner into the device, and it will enter whatever it scans as text. That's quite handy if you're doing data processing indoors. I find the external barcode scanners are quite nice to use. And here's an example QR code that you might scan to jump to a specific plot. Okay, we talked about data grid. This one's available also in the general settings. Gives you that grid to see what you're missing and jump to a specific combination of plot and trait. Lets you adjust the row headers like we saw. Oh, maybe we jump back and look at this. We talked about the info bars a little bit. By default, we saw there were two. In the appearance settings, you can change to include more info bars. And then when you click on the info bars, you can change what they display. And okay, this is the other setting for jumping more quickly to a specific plot. If you turn on the quick go to in appearance, it makes your primary and secondary editable. So you can jump, if it's row column, to a specific row column. And behavior. Behavior is probably the largest setting screen, all affecting collect behavior. And there's a lot of potential customization depending on your preference to kind of reduce the number of clicks you need to make while collecting. So this first one's handy. If you turn it on, it will automatically jump to the next entry once you have finished advancing through all the traits. And the second one, it will automatically jump to the next entry by just clicking your volume button while you're within the app. The downside, of course, being that if you want to adjust the volume with volume buttons, they're no longer mapped to that, so it won't work well. Some other handy ones, you can disable the entry arrow unless data has been collected, so that'll prevent you from accidentally going past a plot where you haven't collected data. You can also turn off the file sharing pop-up when you export if you never use the file sharing options. All right, now because we're talking about a lot here, let's get back and look at
Sorry, Brian, can you go back a little bit?
yeah.
I have one big question there.
Tell me which
The use day of the year.
yes, okay.
Yeah, this is really problem for me. So if you check there, the data, the value changed day to be integer, right?
Yes.
So when you suppose you have a 2 date format,
Mhm.
and then you keep correcting, and then you check this one, and then you resuming correcting data, then some data has some integer value and some has a date value. Am I right? Or
That is what would happen, yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So let's look. Oops. Let's take a look in the app here as we're talking about it. But yeah, that one I can see what you're saying. It could be a little dangerous if you change it mid data collection for a given field. So all right, jump into general settings. We discussed data grid. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on some of these other ones so we can look at them. And we'll turn on move to unique identifier as either text entry or camera scan. There also are system defaults up here that you can set, and I would generally, for example, if you enable BRAPI, it'll prompt you to change these, but if you're not using some of those other features, you don't need to mess with them. All right, so we looked at general. Profile we already saw when we set the person. Oh, Tane, you asked about this option at the bottom
Yes.
here.
But this is probably okay. And then we don't have too much time left, so
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Long story short, you can enable that. That's just for debugging purposes. So if your app crashes, it'll be easier for us on the development side to figure out why.
Oh, okay. Your side. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and let's see, appearance, quick go to. We'll turn that on so you guys can see that. We'll adjust the number of info bars. Let's say we turn it up. And then some of these others are just for appearance entirely. You can customize toolbar options, change the language. That's obviously quite helpful if you prefer not English. And theme, you can change the color of the app, which isn't actually just superficial. If you're having trouble seeing in intense sunlight, the high contrast theme can be handy. Leave it on default for now. And okay, let's take a look quickly at some of those settings we changed. See how the collect screen changes. So one of them, the quick go to, has made our fields here editable, so we can jump to say row 7, column 5. If I can actually, there we go. It's a little weird working with my mouse instead of clicking with my fingers, but anyway, so yeah, as soon as you hit enter, it'll jump to the combination you picked. So now we're on plot 205. Some of the other things we added, jump to next empty entry. They're basically all empty right now, so it's just going one by one. But if we had data collected for most, it would jump to the one that's closest without data. And then this is the other one that we said is quite handy for jumping to the right plot. So it's the option I chose lets you use an external barcode scanner if you have it plugged in. Or you can click the scan button here and use the device camera to scan a label with a plot ID, and it will jump to the correct one. All right, so that's the first set of settings. And then behavior is where a bunch of the particular custom ones are. And just so we're not getting too confused, I'm gonna turn off some of the ones we turned on so the toolbar doesn't get too busy. Quick go to. Okay. So for behavior, we'll turn on cycling traits advances entry. Volume keys, we don't have a real device, so not much point in testing that. This is a new feature as well that wasn't in 5.4, but that was in 5.5. You can set it so that whenever you advance it, the entry, it returns to the first trait in the list. Let's look at those two separately here. So now that we have cycling traits advances entries, if I go through all of my traits, it'll automatically jump to the next entry in the order. Alternatively, if we set advancing entry returns to first trait, let's test that one out. We can, say collect all the way up to insect damage on one. We jump to the next plot, and it will automatically go back to our first trait here, which is notes. So a couple different ways to reduce the amount of clicking you have to do while you're navigating the field. All right, let's see, what else did we mention? So disable file sharing, use data that year. So the idea here is sometimes, the date's only relevant with respect to other dates. And by collecting it as an integer, you can more easily calculate, the difference between your planting date and your flowering date, for example.
So would that be considered the Julian date? Is that what we're talking about here? The number of days in a year?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So January 1st would be day 1.
Okay.
December 31st, 365. Yeah, that's how it will change things. But yeah, good idea to not change that in the middle of a trial. Otherwise your date format.
I feel like
formats in your
yeah, I feel like it would be better to be a different types of trait, like Julian date
Different format,
or
yeah, I think
or
so.
like date,
Yeah. Julian date could be the nice.
Yeah, I've seen traits within same, like our blueberry trait ontology. I think there's some that are Julian date and then some that are date, actual date.
Yeah.
So this is program wide when you select that box.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah,
it should maybe be
wide.
trait. It should maybe be a trait.
A trait format option.
Yeah.
All right, this is good feedback. I hadn't thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Julian date is days, right? Good name for the format, I think.
Yeah. I like that. I've made a note, and I'll pass that on to Trevor, because I think that would be a good way to re-implement it, and it would reduce the number of settings here as well. It'll make it a little less busy. Okay. Yep. that's essentially it. There are a few others. Flip-flop arrows changes. The swaps the entry and the trait one. So which is kind of nice if you're clicking through all your traits on each plot and then clicking the plot, you want the arrow. You're clicking through most being closer to the trait entry. So that's another option. All right, since we're short on time, let's go ahead and I'm going to skip down. I guess we should very briefly mention. So this won't be easy to show now since we're using an emulator, but on your own devices, you can test some of the sound settings. They're quite nice. They'll give you little custom indications when you navigate through all your entries, or sorry, when you advance an entry, navigate through all your traits, or when the primary order changes, meaning you've advanced from one row, or you should advance from one row to the next, or one column to the next. So worth testing out when you're working with a real physical device. And all right, last but not least, let's talk about the breeding API, which is the wave of the future for getting data in and out of the app. It's disabled by default, but if you check this checkbox, it'll open up all the configuration settings to start using Brappy. Tane, you had a question about a new feature. It's not, I'm using the Play Store version of the app here, 5.5, but you'll see in 5.6 there's an additional setting here that lets you automatically configure your Brappy Brappy connection by scanning a QR code.
Right.
And that's something that BIMs may want to think about implementing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice feature.
But until you do that, the main thing you have to set up is the base URL.
Right.
So by default, it connects to the Brappy test server, which contains some very limited, not very realistic breeding data. So I'm going to change it here. Is there?
Yeah, I tested in the chat box.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have the.
Oh,
here we go. Okay.
Do you see?
I do. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't have the chat open, but I do now. Let me see if I can copy paste that.
I think you just need to change the base URL and
right. Let's see if it'll let me cut. Yeah.
Can you paste?
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
A little tricky getting the clipboard to work with the emulator, but we did it.
And,
all right. Base URL and
then you have to change the OIDC discovery URL.
Gotcha.
I think
all right, let me start with this. We'll see if it let's come down and do the
that's okay.
grant is already set. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to see, did that copy over? I think yeah. Cool. All right, and V2 is the default now, so
can you
that should already be there.
Yeah, and
so let's go ahead and I'm not seeing.
There's an extra. That URL is different than what Tan pasted in.
Oh, yeah.
For the OIDC. you need to remove the BIMS \FB.
Oh,
Okay, one moment here. Got too much showing on the screen here. I see what you're talking about.
oops.
There we go. Okay. All right. Let's see if my new user, let me log in here. Hey, there we go. Okay. Now, Ken, I haven't connected to GDR before. Is there like an
Okay, can you-
authorized?
Yeah, it should be. Can you go back to field book and then
Yeah.
click authorize again? Yeah,
Aha,
yeah,
there we go.
right there.
All right. There we go. Cool.
Okay.
All right, and yeah, automatically asks you if you want to make it the
So you have to
default.
check both. Or
You don't. I usually cancel.
Oh,
'cause
default.
I-
Okay, never mind. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, you can make it the
Yeah.
default if you would like. Yeah.
Okay.
All
So
right.
can you go field
Yep.
and oh,
So
okay, okay. Can you go okay, never mind. That's fine.
yeah. So now that we have the Brappy setup configured, it'll show up as an option in our import
Mhm.
dialog. And
Okay.
cool. Okay. Now, oh, interesting.
Yeah, we added you as the editor for this program. That's why you see them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can go up and just organize by program or something. So these are the trials. You have only one program, but
Right.
So both trial belong to one program.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you click, oh, okay.
Yeah, you can fill in where I'm missing something here, but I'll just mention. So yeah, when you connect to a database to import fields, it'll automatically load a list of fields that the database has. And in the upper right hand corner, you can filter those fields by breeding program. It looks like I'm associated with just the one, so
Mhm.
it's not the most useful filter, but if you're connected to more than one, then it's helpful. You can also filter by trial, which
Oh,
yeah,
trial.
is not a concept that
Yeah, we
a
don't
lot
have
of databases map
yeah.
easily to. I know breed-based trial is really more like a folder.
Mhm.
But in any case, this is not a crazy long list that we need to filter down tightly, so we can just go ahead and pick one of these. Now, what I'm not, and this is an interface that we're planning to improve a fair amount, but for other databases I've used, you have to select the observation level. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Maybe there's only one level, so it can automatically tell which one we want. But all right, and then when you have a field selected, you click preview. It'll pull in name, description, location, number of plots or entries, number of traits that are already connected.
Mhm.
And then you pick your primary and secondary, which row and column should be what we want. So I should be able to go ahead and click save. Yep, there we go. So it's pulled in our trial layout. And when we select it, it lets us know that in order to export data via Brapper, we have to make sure we've imported both the field and the traits via Brapper. All right. So shall we look at traits now as well?
Yeah, can you check? And
Yeah.
you see all the trait is like see the text.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
because you are using the version 5.5,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I downloaded with me and Suga tested 5.6. You can download it,
mhm.
and it's mapping correctly. So
Yeah, that's a good point. It's
okay.
a bug that I remember existed, but yeah, it's been addressed in the newer version.
Mhm.
But even if you see this happen, well,
have-
the better thing to do is upgrade to a version where the bug doesn't exist. But you would ascertain if you make edits on a Brappy trait, for example, adjusting the name or the format, it will still work with the export, and it won't get overwritten by a re-import, because the Brappy traits are identified by the database ID rather than the name.
Mhm.
But anyway, okay, so we got all those traits imported. So these ones are already linked to the field, but if you're importing traits from Brappy that aren't linked to the field, you can still, you can do that by going to import, export, import. We probably want to keep the current trait list. We don't want to delete them. We just want to add, and then you can pick your Brappy database. And then it will make a traits call to the database, and this would be another way to add traits. But
Yeah, something wrong.
work in progress. This might also be a working in 5.6, but not in 5.5 feature here.
So can you go back to field and then talk about the sync?
Yeah. Okay, so in your fields list, each item has this little menu here. We mentioned sort and delete. If it's a Brappy field, you can also pick sync, and that will contact the database, check out what data is up there versus what you have locally, and if it looks like it's found observations that are in the database but we don't have in the app, we can save the sync.
So
and
I have a question here. So
yes,
you do the sync, and then you grab all the data from the beams, and then those data will be updated in Fieldbook, or probably not. It's really
that's
sync. Or
yeah. So let's actually go ahead and look. I'm not sure if they'll show up in the collect screen.
can you click the data grid there?
Yeah. Let's take a look here. Yeah, there we go.
Oh,
Yeah, I think if we
grab
do,
they really sync there.
yeah. So if you
Hmm.
import the field via Brappy, it pulls in the layout.
Mhm.
Then if it already has traits and data linked to it in the database and you sync, that should pull those in too. That's what we're seeing. And so now
Okay.
let's go ahead and check out. I don't know if there's a particular plot we want to jump to. Let's just go here. Why not?
Okay, so
and
this data
yeah.
is text, so you have to change.
Yeah, that's just I'm not familiar with this test trial or the test traits, and like you said, they didn't in this version. They're not importing the right format,
Yeah.
so this is a little confusing. But let's just enter some example data here. Do you know for what would be a? Oh, I know why I'm confused. I should have reset my settings here. So I have the flip-flop arrows turned on still. Let me go ahead and turn that off. Okay. Should make things a little less crazy. All right, let's jump to this guy. All right, so yeah, we don't have the right trait formats. A counter would be numeric. I'm a little confused. Yeah, should there be a value for CA3 here? But we don't. All right, well, let's
Yeah, T counter now is text, right? So you have to change to the numeric, counter,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then that added data.
There's a little to iron out here. Let's, because we know it's numeric, since it's a counter, let's just enter an example here. Yeah, okay, save that. Let's enter another numeric data point. And then just to see what this looks like. So since we have traits imported from Brappy, field imported from Brappy, when we go to export, we can choose Brappy, and it'll show us this summary of the status. So it sees that we added 2 new observations.
Okay, so here, but do you see the 0 next to the synced observation?
I
So,
do, yeah.
It should be some number, right? Because you sync and you grabbed all the data from the beam. Yeah, so
There's definitely something not working exactly how it's supposed to here. I think it's just in the display, but yeah, we may want to test this in 5.6 in addition to 5.5, since I know a fair number of bugs, including the trait format bug, are fixed in 5.6. But this should at least work for syncing or exporting the new observation. So let's go ahead and click export. So it will say successful, and then we should check.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar.
So can you go GDR?
Yeah, let's go ahead and see if we can open GDR. I'm gonna exit my presentation here. CC.org, right? And let's see.
Under the tools, Beam's top.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Can you pick Sweet Cherry?
Let's see. Yep.
And yeah. Okay. And then can you go sidebar? Can you open the fieldbook management under and then see the import observation data? Can you click that? And today's birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you click that? And can you view? Click view.
Let's see.
Okay. Can you download the data file? Can you click the download on the job detail?
Job details. Download all or
No.
download?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Able to open. Okay. This is the file data you just collected. 267 trait T counter. Yeah. And
Nice.
here's the data format. Yeah. So
there we go. Brappy round tripping in action. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And so I see, it's got the timestamp and
the person is not I don't. Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I think I had it set, but that may be a limitation of the Brappy call actually, rather than the app or the database.
So when you export it to the Beams, you just go there, open the import observation data. Then you can see, and then you say complete. So data should be in.
So walk me, so this is my first time connecting to BIMs at all. You said,
then where should I-
right. So how did I get here? I came to Sweet Cherry, a specific program.
Mhm.
And then where did I,
And you open the
I guess I
field book management and
Fieldbook
then
management. Yep.
click
Here we go.
the
Import observation data.
observation.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
took me to this. Yep.
and somebody group member uploaded, you can see in there too.
Yeah, okay, so there's some additional,
That's me. Oh, super. Yeah.
let's look at this. So this is data that you uploaded a week ago.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Okay. We already have a more than 2.5 almost. So
Yeah, sorry, we went a little long here, so that's probably good.
do you
Good
have
spot to wrap up.
So if that sync worked, like all the data would have imported again, you think? Not
Yeah.
just the new data?
So the sync
Mhm.
the sync reported that it worked correctly, and we can see in the data grid that it pulled in the data. However, it's just there's something going on in 5.5 where the trait
Okay.
formats
Yeah.
aren't pulled in correctly and the data is not showing in the actual
So
display.
this is really great way to combine, like basically combine the data from multiple devices. I
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So Tane, you uploaded this data, I was able to pull that down. And
Yeah.
then now that I just uploaded this, you'll be able to pull that down to your device.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, it's all in the database. So yeah, that's real
Yeah.
handy.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to test it more about syncing one.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
not sure data is updated or overwritten. I had to make sure that.
Yeah.
So I don't want a new data to be overwritten by sync.
Right.
And then if that you have so much data and then syncing created, I don't know, timeout. Is it possible? I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, that's I guess it depends on the
Yeah,
connection speed, but yeah, there is a hard
Issue.
limit on request times. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. All right, that's all I've got. So, and like you said, we're running a little long, so I think any other questions?
There is a still question. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Let me get back. It says my screen sharing is paused, but I need to go ahead with the question while I'm finding my screen here.
Oh, okay. So I think we already handled this. So is there a possibility to link data collected from different devices? Also, what can I do if I lose my device in the middle of the season?
Yeah. Okay. So for the first one, using the Brappy sync
Yeah.
is the way to go to merge data from multiple devices. And now, when you say lose the device, you mean lose the physical device?
I think so. I think that's why he means.
Yeah. So the Fieldbook app is built to make it nearly impossible to lose data by accidental deletion. Anytime you delete observations, they're actually just obsolete, but they're still in the database, so you can recover from the database dump. But if you lose the physical device itself, then it's probably gone unless you sync.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
You stop the recording.
Sounds good.